I often find that there is a fine line between reality and illusion, that art becomes life and life becomes art. What is true is that we are the youngest creatures on the planet. Everything else has been here a lot longer than we have, and it has always lived in harmony, in relationship, in intimacy. But we humans, we seem to have a little bit of trouble with that.
We cannot be completely callous to the pain that's happening, the amount of species that are going extinct, the fires, the droughts, the floods, the wars, the pandemics, all of that. And at the same time, we cannot stop being joyful.
This human condition avails us of so many opportunities to not only come into harmony and unity, but to find the most creative and beautiful expressions to do so.
Heartivism, it's like the activism that comes from the heart.
I'm really looking forward to today's conversation. It is one that is going to be richly poetic, a level of depth and seeing that perhaps you haven't looked at life from.
Welcome. You have entered the realm of 1111 Talk Radio. Your host is SIMRAN. It's time to discover your own language with the universe. Empower yourself, broaden your mind, open your heart, and discover who you are. Now, here's your host, SIMRAN.
Gabriel Meyer, who really has no label, no title, and yet has so many, is known as a flexitarian, a global minstrel, a cross-cultural world bridger, celebrating spirit beyond enemy lines. You could say he's a musician, a peacemaker, a sacred activist, a poet, a keynote speaker, and he's now an author. His new book, On the Verge of the Verb, really does blend the mythic fiction life sometimes seems to be and the true stories that life shows us to be.
As a peacemaker and somebody who worked in conflict zones and front lines between Iranians and Israelis, between Palestinians and Israelis, there's always this way of getting people together through a blanket, let's say, because when people are cold, it's not Palestinian cold or Jewish cold. It's cold, you get a blanket and the two of them can share it. The same in a kitchen. When you cut tomatoes, the tomatoes are not Palestinian or Israeli, they're tomatoes, and you can both enjoy it. So cooking, when you hear a lullaby from a grandma, it doesn't matter if it's in Arabic or it's in Hebrew, it's in Farsi or it's in Hindi or it's in Spanish. It's a lullaby. It affects your limbic brain. It relaxes the reptilian brain, the flight, fight, fright, freeze responses. And you go into a different kind of mode. And once you are in the limbic place, then anything can happen because you can talk from the cortex and you can resolve, water issues, land issues. When you are relaxed and you don't think that your safety is attacked, and you can talk to someone without feeling that he wants to make you feel worse, that you want to get to a good result for both of you, then anything is possible.
Gabriel Meyer, you really are an artist of life. You use many mediums to bring together concepts, but more so to bring together people. Part of your sacred activism, it is how you bring together discordant parts so that they start to harmonize. I'd like to start first with art becomes life and life becomes art. How these two things have really woven together for you.
For example, in Hebrew, the word for art, omanut, comes from the word amen. So it's deeply related to the faith in something bigger than us, which kind of life represents, because we are part of something much bigger than our individual selves. And so art is kind of a dance from ceremony, and then it became performative, but in its origin was prayer formative, meaning forming prayer. When I do events, there's one that I do that's called a prayer formance, because we form prayer together. So the shamanic ceremonial origins of art are what I draw from. My life and my art are very much intertwined because many of the songs are born from meetings and gatherings in nature, Let's say we had 4 years where we used to meet Iranians and Israelis in the mountains of Turkey without a program, without money, without just people to people, and Iranians coming from Iran and Israelis coming from Israel. Many of these life experiences turn out into songs. One example that I want to give you is there's this song by Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, which is a Qawwali master from Pakistan and Punjab, and the Sufi master, an amazing singer. And this brother from Iran, he was singing this song that I loved so much, but I didn't know the melody very well. And he taught it to me in the mountains of Turkey. I left that place and I wanted to sing it in Israel, where I was living at the time, and I translated at least the chorus into Hebrew. And then in one of my journeys to Egypt, in Sinai, in the desert, where many musicians meet from different cultures, I met these Qawwali singers from California. And they had a guest, and this guest was Pakistani tabla player, and his father was the tabla player of Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan. So when he heard me singing in Hebrew, he said, "Uncle, how do you know my family music?" He started singing, in Urdu, what I sang in Hebrew. And we ended up recording this song beyond enemy lines, because Israel and Pakistan don't have relations. They're kind of enemy countries, from Lahore, Pakistan to Tel Aviv. That song is part of one of my albums. So life and art, in this case, a song, music, are completely intertwined. I had very few 9 to 5 jobs in my life, and kind of my art imbues my life, and my life imbues my art.
I love that. You've said a lot just in that little bit about not only who you are, but the expressions that come through you and what can also be experienced in the book that you are releasing on the verge of the Verb. The word heart actually has art in it. It seems like the heart is the connecting piece, for reconciliation, for even an opening to the understanding of another being, where there is conflict and people can be so heady across the table rather than the same side of the table. The heart seems to be eclipsed, non-existent. Can you talk a little bit about the divisiveness in the world and how the heart is missing, and some of these ways of utilizing art or the performance that really do bring opposing sides together that once perhaps were never thought to ever come together?
There is this word artivism, right? It's activism based on art. And then there's this other word which can be coined as heartivism. It's like the activism that comes from the heart. So, for example, I don't know if you remember Standing Rock, a big gathering of Lakota people, Native Americans in 2016, and for the pipeline. They didn't want this pipeline to go through their burial grounds, but they would pray every single day. They were in ceremony, praying for the police who was attacking them, praying for the company, the oil company. The connection between the sacred and the activism is crucial. When you talk about the heart and the brain, it's kind of the brain became the boss. Instead of working together, the heart and the brain, one of them became the boss, and it became like a dictatorship of the brain, and the heart kind of is left behind. And without the heart, we cannot coalesce all the paths that lead to a better life, to more beautiful life, that we know it's possible. Because yes, we are the youngest creature, as you said in the beginning, and we have to ask advice from our elders, the mountains, the rivers, the animals, the trees. But we're also endearing, as the youngest one. Sometimes when we sing, even the birds like it, zebras enjoy it. I had experiences with elephants, with singing overtones in Africa to them, and they really like it when human beings become connected to their heart and become a part of the hoop of life rather than the center, kind of getting beyond the anthropocentric image of the world, where the human being is the boss and the center. Is like the same thing that happened to the brain and the heart. I think that we need to come back to empower the heart. And that doesn't mean to let go of the brain, because the intelligence can be used in service of the heart. But the heart has to guide. The heart has to take the wheel and put ethical values of compassion and of justice in the navigation.
I think when you're talking about the mind in that way, it sounds like you're really speaking about letting go of the arrogance of the brain, the place where we think we know everything, and allow a little bit of that mystery, that compassion, that openness to allow the brain to serve. What's going on in the world are these lines of justice versus peace and love, or separation versus unity. To bridge those things together, talk a little bit about what that has to do with Verb.
Let's go back to Abraham, which is kind of the ancestor from the family that I come from. Abraham was the father of Isaac and Ishmael, the father of the Arabs and the father of the Jews, the Israelites, and also, and the mothers Sarah and Hajar. Abraham was initiated in Jerusalem by the first king of Jerusalem. After he fought many wars, he met this man, this king, called Melchizedek, the king of justice. And Jerusalem is the city of peace, of wholeness. When he met Abraham, the initiation that he did with him was to drink wine and to eat bread. That's where the ritual in the church comes from. That's where the Jewish ritual for Kiddush and Amotzi, the blessing of the wine and the blessing of the bread, comes from. And what do the mystics say about that, the Kabbalists? They talk about the bread being the peace and being the love, and the wine being the truth and being the justice. And the teaching goes that they cannot separate. You cannot have love without truth, because then it becomes, without integrity. It doesn't have the honesty. It doesn't have the transparency. And you cannot have the justice without the peace, because then it becomes, too much and too much fire. So fire and water, justice and peace have to go together. Love and truth have to go together. So the people who get too much into activism and get burnt out and forget about their heart and get too self-righteous, trying to, make purity tests to other activists, they're too much in the truth. And truth alone cannot survive. But also love alone cannot survive. They need each other. So that's why the teaching went that you can never separate bread from wine. You need both. You need to say the truth, but you also need to think about the love. You have to have justice, but you have to think about peace to achieve the justice. Sometimes it's more important to think of the goal, let's say harmony or beauty and justice, than to say your truth. Sometimes you need to shut up and not say your truth, because it is not going to bring that harmony. And maybe somebody else will say it. Maybe a cloud will say it. Maybe the rain will say it. Maybe time will say it. So we don't need to always say our truth at expense of harmony. And the same, we don't need to shut up always, because sometimes we do need that truth. There is sacred rage and there are lines that shouldn't be crossed.
I think there may be some individuals listening that may say, well, when I take a moment and I look at the news and I see the things that are taking place between the Ukraine and Russia, or I see the things that have taken place in Gaza and Israel, and I see all of the suffering and the pain, is there this place of the witness holding that, seeing that, allowing their own heart to break, allowing the place to be inspired, but also knowing that the earth in itself is a body? I think I've heard you say these places that these things happen can be like acupuncture points.
Yes.
And if they are these acupuncture points working on the earth for one, but equally there to work on us?
Yes, definitely. We're all feeling this. So grief is part of the solution as well. We cannot, be completely callous to the pain that's happening, the amount of species that are going extinct, the fires, the droughts, the floods, the wars, the pandemics, all of that. And at the same time, we cannot stop being joyful, because beauty is all around us at the same time. And the border is so thin, so vulnerable, but it's so important to protect our joy and to keep getting together with friends and to keep celebrating life and not to let the internet and the computers and the screens, take all our juice away. Look up the sky and look at the birds and connect with trees and connect with animals and connect with friends and even connect with people you don't know in the street and smile and be brave and say something nice to someone you never met before in an honest way. I think that's also part of the acupuncture. It's not that the reality is affecting us from the outside. We also affect reality from the inside. So there's an arrow that's coming from within and it's coming out of us. And we have to have agency. We have to be sovereign in those things and, never underestimate what a joke can do, what a lullaby can do, what cooking with a friend. I'm personally now I'm taking care of my 88-year-old mom. That's what I do most of the day. It's important, it's just one person, but if you believe that everything is one and everything is interconnected, when you smile at the little child in the street, people can feel it up to China, people feel it all over the place. Everything is felt. Also, when you say something nasty to someone, it's felt. And we all fall. I'm not a saint, I'm not perfect, but it's good to know that we are one and we are interconnected. It's not just a New Age concept, it's a reality, it's a physical reality. To be able to stand and be who we believe we are in our ideas and to act that way in our daily life is super important these days, especially these days that people are so scared and people are losing everything that they thought they knew.
I have long believed that our lives, our very lives that we are willing to face in the full paradox of what you're describing, the grief and the joy, the hope and the hopelessness, and everything in between, is the very place of that enlightenment, that there's not this need to escape and run away or try to pretend, but that if we really do face what touches our hearts and our souls, what we feel inspired to do, then all of a sudden we have an opening. On the Verge of the Verb is fiction. It's a dream. It's a myth. It's truth. It's a vision. And most importantly, it's a prophecy for us if we're willing to receive it.
Yeah, wow, thank you. I talk about the hospice worker and the midwife that are the two main jobs we have in this moment because there is a story that is dying, there are agreements that are dying, there are structures that are collapsing, and we need to be like hospice caretakers for that. We can't just let them die and fight against them while they're dying. We need to maybe acknowledge their presence and let them die with grace. At the same time, we are midwives and doulas, of this new story that we are creating because there are cracks right now. And that has to do with the verb. For example, in the Lakota language, there are no nouns, it's just verbs. I was thinking in my own tradition, in the Jewish tradition, the word for God, the four letters, the ineffable tetragrammaton, as they call it, is the verb to be. At our highest, let's say at God level, there's only verbs. There are no nouns. Nothing is easy to name because things are in relationship constantly. That is the fluctuation in my book between my personal stories and the adventure that we're trying to recruit a group of people that are together that have affinities as sacred agents, I call it, instead of secret agents. And I think humor has to have a big part in all of this healing. The medicine of laughter and the medicine of humor is as important as the grief. And I use it in the book as a verb, trying to bring this healing to acupuncture points like the grave of Abraham in Hebron. That's where all the ancestors of the Abraham family are buried, in this little cave. And then in Jerusalem, which is the mythical place for all conflicts and all peace, the inheritance of peace. So the book travels from my own shadows and my own experiences. So I use my personal stories in a way I tell the other characters. Some are fictitious and some are not. And we build together this team, Nobel laureates and all these sports stars and fashion people and famous people that are kind of our protection in Jerusalem. And we create this massive healing ceremony that we prepared during a couple of years, and it ends up shifting something very, very strong because it includes the pain and the collective trauma that has been instilled in those places. And it's kind of like breaking a spell of 7,000 years old. You get poetry to burst out of pain. All of a sudden, beauty becomes fashionable, and joy becomes like a currency that people can catch on to. It's not about not seeing the pain. It's not about everything is lovey-dovey and let's make peace. It's about crying all the tears that we need to cry for that pain to transform itself into joy and into a better way of living for everyone.
It's about a real embrace of humanity, the reunion of masculine and feminine, the human and the humus, the celebration of the great mystery and simplicity with all creatures. The organization must be decentralized, loose, so loose that it holds. We are yearning for the poetry of the miracle, for the overtones of mainstream reality to pierce our shells. This is from the book On the Verge of the Verb from Gabriel Meyer. You can find out more about him, all of his music, his poetry, and this book at GabrielMeyerHalavi.com. He has some upcoming events that you might want to know about. March 9th at 3 p.m., he's celebrating this book at Barzak Cafe in Brooklyn. There will be live music and readings and guest musicians and stories. April 17th to 20th in Montreal, and May 1st he'll be in Kingston, Canada. Later on in May, you'll find him touring the West Coast. Again, find out more at GabrielMeyerHalavi.com. You can find that link in the bio description. We'll be right back after these messages.
Listeners, are you looking for a shortcut to better auto insurance for you? Something that takes all the research off your plate? Something that's easy? Something that matches you with lower rates? Something genius? That's where NerdWallet comes in. Their nerds already did the work for you. Just answer a few questions and ta-da! You'll be matched with top insurance providers in your area. Find the right rate for you at nerdwallet.com. After all, using NerdWallet is more than smart. It's genius. Not all applicants will qualify for the lowest monthly payments. NerdWallet Insurance Services Incorporated, California resident license number OK92033.
You are listening to 1111 Talk Radio. SIMRAN is an award-winning author, publisher of 1111 Magazine, powerful speaker of wisdom, and a life mentor. Find out more at IamSimran.com. Now, back to 1111 Talk Radio.
I hope you'll go to 1111mag.com and be sure and register for the 1111 Collective. Be informed of all the wonderful guests, shows, and releases that are coming your way from 1111 Magazine and 1111 Talk Radio. My guest today is Gabriel Meyer. Born in Cordoba, Argentina, is a spiritual activist, musician, and storyteller who brings people together through music, movement, and prayer. On the Verge of the Verb weaves Gabriel's nomadic adventures across more than 20 countries with his reflections on faith, culture, and humanity, where diverse faiths and traditions come together to celebrate and heal. It's really fascinating how he does this, not only through the words in the book, but this has been his life. This is what he does with people, through art and with sound. He's here to express a level of resilience that helps us understand how we really are very much the same and how we have so much in common and yet also can learn so much from one another. And if we do so, unity starts to weave the threads between us. In the book, I love how it opens up and you're bringing in this indigenous elder, Theo Casson,
Yes.
and you're allowing him to impart his wisdom that opens people to the relationship that we have with the elements, with nature. And I think one of the most touching pieces had everything to do with people going to nature to get something. So many of the stories have that thread of bringing relationship to another level.
Yeah, actually, Tiokasin told me this once, that every moment is innocent. We bring whatever we bring to each moment, but the moment is innocent in itself. Tiokasin is a real person. Tiokasin Ghost Horse, you can look him up. And so he's a friend. It became kind of like a mantra, after becoming friends with Tiokasin, is that the word human comes from the word humus. Humus is the topsoil, the most fertile part of the soil in the earth. Once you realize that, and also if you go to the creation story in my tradition, that the man is an earthling. It was Adam in Hebrew, comes from the word Adama, which is earth. And meeting Tiokasin, and meeting like also La Donna Brave Bull, also from the Lakota, who started Standing Rock, I have a story with them which exemplifies their peace technology. I lost it. There was a moment I was in Portugal in this event, big events with 1,000 people and so many activities happening. And I was one of the 4 musicians that had to be everywhere. And they told me to go to this little town to play. And I said, okay, but can I invite people? And the producer said, no, you need to stay. Everybody needs to stay. And the 3 of you need to go. And I lost it. Something triggered in me. I lost myself. I lost my center. I started screaming. La Donna was sitting there. And she was a heavy woman, she wasn't a fast walker or anything, but she got up from her chair and she gave me such a hug, so strong that I couldn't breathe. I couldn't scream anymore. And at the same moment, Tiokasin took me by the shoulder for a walk, and they didn't say a word, not between them, not to me, nothing. And I was already, after 5 minutes, we were 100 meters away from there, and I couldn't be angry anymore because I lost my anger. So this is the Lakota way, they knew that I trust them completely. They made me feel so present and so good. The indigenous people do, they can remember still stuff that we forgot. The indigenous people who are connected to their grandparents and their ancestors, they still remember something that we don't. When they help us to remember that, it's such a beautiful, beautiful feeling, because then a river is not a resource. A river is a being, it's a real being. And the same with, there is no word for nature in Lakota. So you go to a river and you have a relationship with a being. You have a relationship with fire. You have a relationship with a star. Like you have a relationship with your mother, or with a dog, or with a cloud, or with a tomato. Everything is in relationship, in constant relationship. So I feel that indigenous wisdom is so important, and that kind of going back to earth, not peace on earth like Tiokasin says, but peace with earth.
Mm.
That's a very, very big difference, The natural world is not a resource, but the source of life. The reverence, we've lost reverence. We've lost the radical awe of being alive. Wow, we can move our 5 fingers. That's a miracle. Like every single moment is a miracle. We can move our eyebrows. We can smile. We can decide to laugh. We can decide to cry. I mean, all these are miracles. And not to lose that marvelous mystery that embeds every single moment of our lives. And every time we breathe in, it's like we're breathing a new possibility to start all over again in every single breath. And it's so hard to do, but you get by with a little help from your friends. So that's why I try to get friends with a Sufi, and with an indigenous person who works the earth, and with a clown, and with a cook. So I get all the richness from each one, has a gift to offer. A child, a person who's silent, a person who smiles a lot, a person who's serious. Oh, everyone has a gift to offer. One of my songs, it's a prayer that I sing in many different languages, many different traditions. There's a Hebrew mantra, there's a Sufi mantra, Muslim, there's a Christian mantra, there's a Hindu mantra for Krishna, there's a Buddhist mantra, and then there's the nature mantra for those who don't believe in any of the paths. And I always say there's also the silent mantra for people who don't want to sing. And there's the la 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 mantra for the ones who don't connect with words, and they're all part of the same puzzle. I call that the Holy One, WHOLLY. That's the true meaning of shalom and salam. It's not peace. Peace comes from the Latin pax romana. The Romans used to do that kind of peace. They used to sign an agreement with the people, move them from their land, charge them taxes, and say you can do this but not that. That's not real peace. Real peace comes from the word wholeness, where every single part of the puzzle is shining. And when every part of the puzzle is shining, then it's complete. Then harmony is alive.
Hmm. It feels like there just needs to be silence after that. It was beautiful because it's true. When you speak about the story that you shared and your anger and the walk that they took you on, what was really there was their listening,
Mhm.
complete listening, their presence with you. And in the listening, no words need to be spoken because then it is the recognition and the honoring of that holy being that is in front of them. And that
Mhm.
allows us to dissolve and resolve whatever's there and return back to center. The same thing with the water or the mountains or the trees or an animal. If we are with it, are we listening? Otherwise, I think all the noise that's going on inside of our heads is distracting us from the true experience for which we've come here. And then
Yes.
we miss out. Through the book, On the Verge of the Verb, you very clearly share many different societies, many different backgrounds, many different influences, which is kind of like taking individuals on this nomadic journey around the world with you. There's a richness to that, even if they've never stepped foot in that place, to take it in through these stories can be very powerful.
Yes, that's true. I love your mirroring. I think you listen deeply, and I thank you for that. I just wanted to share something that Tiokasin, it came to mind. I was sharing with him, I think the last chapter, because in the beginning I just shared with him, the prologue where he's the protagonist with me, and he loved it. And then I said, hey, I want to share with you a little more. So he asked me, Gabriel, he said, do you think the trees like your book? That's what you need to ask. Are the birds happy with your book? Those are the questions that I want to know, he said to me. So that was so strong. And then he smiled and he said, you know what? I think they do. I think they like it. So I was so happy. It's in the stories that you actually bring that relationship to life. So part of my prayer performances or whenever I do something, and also of course in the book, it's to tell my stories, because that humanizes and gives humus to the human and makes somebody vulnerable, which are the kind of the same letters as venerable. When you tell a story with vulnerability, then you become ready to sing. When the heart pours gently through your throat and your tone is vulnerable, then you're ready to sing. And defenses are breaking down within. Those old divers that used to have this in like 100 years ago, whatever, they had this big equipment to go underwater, and they are protected and protected and protected, and they don't feel almost anything. And reality also has that. It has a persona, it has a protection. It's like the defense mechanisms of reality. They're so thick that we hardly feel anymore. We can hardly see. We have so many layers of thoughts and of explanations and of religions and of philosophies and of concepts and knowledge and all this. And sometimes that gets in the way. It's like an explanation. It's something that was plain. It became in the past plain, or something that was scripted and then it became to describe it. You take away the script out of the script. So we've lost the direct connection with everything, with the mystery. There is a gift when human beauty gets together. And this is something that we can use as a tool for beautifying our breath, for beautifying our time in the kitchen, for beautifying our jokes, beautifying our time with the computer, even whatever we do, like try to have a moment of mystery where we bow to something bigger than us.
I knew this would be a poetic vision, and I think oftentimes people wonder what really creates peace. And so many people in the spiritual world and personal growth world, when they hear that word multidimensional, they take it to this place of 3D, 4D, 5D, something that's outside of us, something that is the leaving of this world. And it was really clear to me after my own process of deep grief that multidimensional had everything to do with gathering up the parts of ourselves that are inside of us, the emotional, the mental, the heart, the energetic, all these pieces and parts. And I've heard you say that what creates peace is that multidimensional gathering. I would love for you to share what you do when you bring community together.
Yeah, so for example, in the gatherings that we did in the when the second Intifada broke, we started like gathering about 150 people, and like 6 years later, we were like 7,000 people, Palestinians, Israelis, even from Gaza and the West Bank, and all sorts of Jews from Israel and internationals, and we worked at the four levels, like you talked about, the dimensions. So the first dimension would be the body, and that meant that we had a kitchen where everybody could go and cut tomatoes and make a salad together. The kitchen was open for lunch and dinners. Whoever wanted to go cook would meet. Palestinian grandmother would meet like a young guy from Tel Aviv and cooking, together, cutting some vegetables for the salad or creating the soup for the evening. That was the physical level. At an emotional level, in the mornings, what we had, the first thing we did was listening circles with facilitators, groups of up to 20 people, with trained facilitators in Arabic and Hebrew. There was also groups in English for the internationals. Let's say whoever was there in the morning, there were 600 people, 700 people. We divided them into 10, 20 groups, and each one had an hour and a half to talk in first person and share at the emotional level what they were going through. Not a political discussion, not a conversation, just sharing a heart song, the heart song of each one. And then at the mind level in the afternoon, we used to have workshops where somebody would teach about the water problem in Gaza, and another one about the mystical aspect of Hasidism and Judaism, and the Imam of Al-Aqsa Mosque would come and talk about it together with a rabbi, and to melt the ignorance between each other at the mind level. And then at the spiritual level, at the level of fire, because the body, of course, is the earth, right? The bones are made of earth. The emotion is the water, and then the mind is the air. And then at the fire level, the spirit level, we used to have ceremonies in the sunset and interfaith ceremonies. And at the end, in the night after dinner, it was just celebration. There were tons of bands and choreographies of different peoples and villages and combinations of musicians and celebration. So that was like a multi-dimensional gathering and a microcosmos of what peace is like, not what it would be, not like in paper, but in real experience. So we had like a microdose of peace in 5 days or 6 days, and we did the same with youth gatherings. And I do the same thing when I do a prayer performance for 50 people. I start at an intimate level for the people to feel their bodies. There is dance, there is movement, there is a little breath, there is intimacy, and slowly growing into bliss, into starting to joy. There's the mind. There is, of course, stories that bring the water, that bring the emotion into it. So this is deeply embedded in the prayer also, in the Jewish tradition. The old mystics in the 2nd century, they used to prepare 3 hours for a prayer of 20 minutes. And they used to go down from the prayer another 3 hours. It was as important to prepare to pray and to get down from the prayer than to pray itself. Because the whole idea of prayer is that becomes part of your life. It's not something which is outside. It's part of how you move your fingers. It's part of how you smile. It's part of how you look at a tree. It's part of your life. It's not an abstract concept.
Just support and deliver the precise signal to the untidy spirit warrior at their weakest moment. The alliance will catch. It's sacred timing which will drum you closer to breath and the holy playfulness of these letters being listened to by you. This is from Gabriel's book, On the Verge of the Verb, GabrielMeyerHalavi.com. Be sure to continue to listen because I want to share one of Gabriel's songs.
Come closer, closer, closer. Come on, move for peace. Closer, closer. Put one hand in your heart and another one below your belly button. Hug yourself for a moment. You deserve it. You really deserve it. This is such an ancient prayer, and with the most pure part of ourselves, let's try to sing it from the Temple of Solomon. יברכך אדוני וישמרך, יאר אדוני פניו אליך, ויחונק יישא אדוני פניו אליך, וישם לך שלום, וישם לך שלום, 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 וישם לך שלום, סלאם, 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 וישם לך סלאם, וישם לך שלום, 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 וישם לך שלום. Shalom, 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 ויעשה לך שלום. Thank you to all the brothers and sisters who came here, to everyone, singers and clappers and musicians and producers, Walis and Tibetans and Indians and Americans, everyone, women, men, children.
This was a beautiful show that truly depicts the understanding of how we come together and bring people together. It is just a sliver of this amazing individual, and it is the reason that you can't really label Gabriel Meyer. There is no name you can put on him because he is so many things, just as he is being the example to us to embrace so many things, so many people, so many cultures, so many ways. Gabriel's creative portfolio includes 4 music albums, 2 books of poetry, and now his first prose book, On the Verge of the Verb, an autobiographical fiction of prophetic sorts. He continues to inspire through his art and activism while caring for his mother. GabrielMeyerHalabi.com. You will find that link in the bio description below. Be sure to check it out. Thank you so much, Gabriel, for all of your beautiful expression, your art, your wisdom, and your sharing so generously on this episode of 1111 Talk Radio. It has been a pleasure and an honor to have you here.
For me too, Simran. Thank you so much for your depth of listening. It's rare to find someone that listens so deeply. Thank you so much.
I hope you'll go to 1111mag.com and be sure and register for the 1111 Collective. Be informed of all the wonderful guests, shows, and releases that are coming your way from 1111 Magazine and 1111 Talk Radio. Until next week, I am SIMRAN, in love, of love, with love, and as love. Be well.
Thank you for opening your mind to a new reality, your heart to greater compassion, and your experience of aliveness with 1111 Talk Radio. Join host Simran next Tuesday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern Time to step through the gateway of conscious living. You are not on the journey. You are the journey.